Hello, everybody. Um, got a couple things to go over today. As mentioned the other day, our class session is going to be a little bit shorter, up to about the time for a break, and then I have to get in the car and head to French Lake. Uh, as a result of that, over the next couple days, I may not be as quick as normal answering emails. It might take me a couple hours. I'll be checking it periodically as often as I can, because I know y'all got the projects coming up. You might have some questions on those. Or the first project coming up due. So it shouldn't be too long of a delay. I just won't be sitting right by my computer all day. The rest of the day and tomorrow and Friday like I normally. Has anybody looked at the discussion board yet this week? This one is the first of three that in the past has gone over really, really well. So it's not quite like a regular discussion board. I guess I could have logged into Ivy Learn before class to save a moment or two, but it doesn't take too long. So the discussion board this week, and then there's two more of them later this semester. It's kind of based off a common team strategy in game development, where one person will come up with a like plot or just basic storylines, characters to get started with. So I put that there for the prompt. So there's just like a character and certain goals that the character needs to accomplish. And then your responses, I put some examples in the first one, are the design choices, the style choices. How would you tell this game? They need bright colors, bubbly music, just something dark and eerie with creepy music playing. What do you think would be the best way to turn this plot into a story? And that's what your discussion is. In the past, it's led to some really, really, really good, actually some of the best discussion boards I've ever seen. A lot more participation than some, but hopefully it'll be a little more fun than some of the discussion boards you may have seen in some of your other classes. But does that make sense to everybody? See what you're supposed to do? Just is it from that storyline? Is it something that would be a horror story, or would that be a good game to make for something for little kids? And just what design and style choices would go well on that? And remember, the initial reply is due by Thursday, which is tomorrow. So that coming up. What else did I have on here? Oh, cutscenes. Since I'm making that Ivy Online shell, there's a short video in there talking about that. Did everybody see what was in the module 1, module 2 assignment, the first game? You're required to do some cutscenes. Everybody see that little video? Like, you don't need a big full animated thing to introduce the story. So you just open up a Godot project and put a rich text label on there. Actually, we can walk through that real quick. Walk through that, and then the fourth thing I have in here is working on some stuff about a sprite sheet. Is that assignment, the first animation assignment is due. I'll just create another new game project. Call it 3. A small thing, so one that's going to be deleted next week. Yeah, next week we're going to have a much larger follow along example. The sort of thing that might not get deleted that time. So for your cutscene, you can just set up some simple world. And it doesn't have to be animated. That does take quite a bit of time, animations and sound and all the stuff that would make a really good cutscene for like a release level game. So what will be enough is if you just add rich text label. Actually, we just search for text. Um, the text edit, that's our input text boxes. The rich text label has style, we can style it, and a lot more options. We don't necessarily have to in this case, but we just spread that out everywhere across the whole scene and then write your intro scene. Here's the story this game is telling. So just some words will be enough for this case. And then maybe put that on there, tell the story. You can kind of go through there. Down under theme and theme overrides, that's going to be a lot of your theme overrides, going to have a lot of your stuff like colors. The theme itself, it's actually a style sheet you look. Basically put together a style sheet, not cascading style sheets. It's a little bit different, but the same idea there. It has all the color and font sizes and colors and fonts and everything you're going to use. See if I'll color. Choose different fonts or different sizes. And there's all the controls for making it look a little bit nicer. You can just look into themes and get themes and rich text editor themes and Godot should get you right to the page that tells you everything you need to do on there. Nope, that's not the size. I thought, oh, normal font size. There we go. Make that a little bit bigger, and then maybe add a button to start the game. Which, notice the buttons start really, really small. I'll just make it a start button and drag it down to the bottom. Scale it out a little. A start button, maybe a help button as well to give some instructions, open menu, something, the basic stuff. And then to attach that to a script, we can really attach to any scripts. I'll just put one up here for the word create this script. And then on the button, when we have the button selected under node, here is the signals, which are, I think, week 4 reading assignment when we get to see signals. But the built-in functions that our nodes use to communicate with each other is the quick version on that. So you see that when the button's down, when the button's up, so down is like the whole time the button's being held down, and up is like on the release. So it's after you click it once, and then when you let go of it, the button up function will be called. Pressed is the one that's just going to happen one time. The button gets clicked and it was pressed. So if we just double click on pressed, this little dialog pops up and it asks what script do we want to connect it to, so we can put that on any of the scripts in our games, any of them in there. You just hit connect, and it will generate the function. So then you just have to set whatever the button's going to do, which for a cutscene is probably going to go to another scene. So let me save this as cutscene. That'll work. I'll make another one called level. We just have someplace to go. Put words in here for example. So I'll search for a rich text label, and this is the playable level. Throw that in the box there for the text. Uh, there's when I had it on the scale tool, when I scaled it up, it's scaling up the scroll bar and everything. So instead of scaling it, make sure you go to the arrow and resize it. And then change your font size if it needs to be bigger or something. Move that somewhere near the center. And I'll save that as level. Then if we go to the script, here in that function that's going to run whenever the button gets pressed, if we look over at our hierarchy or the file explorer section here in the lower left, the cutscene and the level are in the same place. So what we need to do is access this and then jump to the other, load in the other scene. And is that okay? So we have this function get tree. That's referring to the tree hierarchy of files, the file structure there. And from there, oh, oh, I forgot the name of it. I thought it was load scene from file. Oh, change scene to file. So get tree dot change scene to file, and then which file do we want? And we want to switch to level. So actually, we can just click here in the lower left and drag it over, and it'll come in with the add the quote marks to make it a string and all of that. So click and drag is nice because then we don't have to worry about typos. Excuse me. Making typos or anything like that. I need to put a cough drop in my mouth. My throat is really scratchy today. So if everything's saved, then when we run that, we get that'll be sufficient for a cutscene, right? That's an important part of the design is introducing the story, but really good animated ones with lots of sound effects and all the fancy things we would expect in a finished, polished game take a long time, way more time than we have. So just some words on the screen will be enough to cover the cutscene criteria because that shows that you know the logically how to jump back and forth between them, and then all you need is time to do the animation and all the other parts. Then when we hit the button, you see it jumps right to the playable level, which on your projects is going to be an actual playable level. Yes. It's already in there. So a question in the chat about the time transition. So whenever we have our two loop functions, either process or physics process, we get this this parameter. Yeah, we have to have that in every game engine. So we're humans, so we're probably thinking about things, movement and stuff happening in terms of seconds, our time scales. Whereas the game engine's probably, in the default settings, probably 140 frames per second. But we can set it to whatever we want. But there are a couple problems. One thing that was discovered very, very early in game development is consistent frame rates are dangerous. 60 frames per second is going to be 16.7 milliseconds, or we might say 17 milliseconds. We might say, okay, each frame gets 17 milliseconds, but some frames could have more processing involved and need more than 17 milliseconds. And if not all those stuff gets done in the allotted time, obviously the game's going to crash. And the other end of that is if none of the frames need 17 milliseconds, all of the processing and adjustments happen in the first, say, 10 milliseconds, and then there's that extra 7 milliseconds. That's going to blow human perception level. We wouldn't notice it at first, but whenever there's hundreds of frames all doing that, our brain's going to pick up on that gap, and that's where the games start to seem jumpy because there's all that time where there's nothing happening. So whenever we set a frame rate, the game engine does its best to average to that. Some frames are going to be longer, some are going to be shorter, and it's constantly reevaluating it and trying to keep the average right around what that setting is, without getting any of that lag where all the processing is finished and nothing happens for a while, or the even worse situation where it's run out of time to do the processing on a particular frame and it crashes. Either way, those frames are going to be a lot shorter than a second. At the very least, we'd want to go with 12 frames a second. That was the earliest animation. That's like 1920s animation, the very first ones where animation starts to look kind of smooth. We wouldn't want, and that it doesn't look that smooth, but that's the bare minimum to kind of fill in all the gaps and not get jumpy animations. Which is still pretty quick, way quicker than the timescales we think of. So what we need a way to convert that. So, for example, if we wanted to turn a character, we could just take every node has some sort of transform data. So we could just refer to our rotational transform. Oops. It's different than 3D. So in 2D, we just have rotation. And in 3D, we have rotation X, rotation dot Y, and rotation dot Z. But in 2D, we're only spinning the one way. So we can just take our rotation and change it by, maybe we want to change 30 degrees. That's what we're going to think, 30 degrees in 1 second. Which is kind of a quick turn, or well, maybe not a very quick, kind of a slow turn. And if you haven't seen it before, most of us see degrees at a very young age, but there's a better way to measure angles, which is radians. If you haven't had a trigonometry class, you probably haven't seen it, but we take the length of the radius and go that far around a circle. It gives us another way to measure angles that also includes the length in it. So it's kind of necessary for calculations. So we might think about degrees. Degrees are like at the center, think of a wheel. At the center, it's just spinning around and around and around, and there's not really any length involved. But out at the edge of the wheel, as it spins, there's some sort of length involved, and that's going to translate to how far that much of a turn, that much of an angle covers as the wheel spins. So we need to switch to radians. So to degree to radian 30. But we're thinking about this in terms of seconds. So our process and physics process has this parameter delta. And what that is the length of time of the last frame. Because every frame is going to be a different length of time as the engine tries to average to this closest one. And we have that in all of our game engines. It should be there somewhere. For Godot, it's passed in just right as a parameter that gets passed in, and we're ready to use it every time this function gets called. So we just need to take this and multiply by delta to get a really small number. So the length of the last frame, if we're running 60 frames per second, is going to be around somewhere in the 15 to 19 millisecond range. So we take this number and multiply by 0.01573, whatever the computer measures it to be, and it makes it a really small number. So the frame after frame after frame, and once that's added up to a full second, then we get 30 degrees in a second, which is more the way we would think about it. Great question. Want to make sure all that stuff makes sense, and that is consistent when it should be readily available in every game. It's usually called Delta 2. I've seen it called a couple other things, but Delta is just the standard math symbol, the Greek letter delta. It's the standard symbol that means change. So change in time. Any other questions that y'all have encountered getting ready for the or working on your projects so far? Okay, I'm not hearing anything come up, so that'll cover what the cutscene is, and that was a great question. I forgot who put it in the chat. Evan, good question, Evan. Probably should have covered that on day one. That's like some of the basic stuff. But it'll be that parameter should be readily available in every game. Otherwise, we'd have to think in terms of milliseconds, and human brain just doesn't work well at that time scale. Sure, saving quick. The other thing is let's do this week is we need to make a sprite sheet. So I was just going to kind of give a few tips, and then since our class is shorter today, it might be a good time to work on that. I don't have any like groundbreaking, profound tips. It's really just a matter of doing it, but having done it a few times, share some thoughts. I'll hit new document as soon as Zoom buttons get out of my way. There they go. So I'm going to open up Inkscape. And for making sprite sheets, this is one of the places where scalable vector graphics come in nicely. We have all those different components. We can get back to any particular one. When we do the next animation, the skeletal animation, it's even better because the skeletal animation, we're just going to draw the character once, and then we program the computer to manipulate those shapes. And it's more of a programming style animation, and we only have to draw it one time. That's the biggest advantage. And scalable vector graphics obviously stretch and bend a lot cleaner than some of our other graphic types. So we need to draw some sort of character. I'm just going to grab a pencil and draw something really quick here with the mouse pad. So I'll draw a head and put a nose on it. So I'll draw that and then come down to the quick colors, maybe. I don't really see anything flesh colored down there. You get different things depending on the screen size. Let me see if I can find it. So I'm going to open this up and go to the fill and stroke tab, which if you don't have the tabs open, you select it, and then under object, second one down is fill and stroke. Something over here. Okay, there we go. That looks like some flesh colored thing. So I can at least copy and paste that color and use it over and over again. The head of the character, zoom buttons are, just hide those. There we go. Oh. Okay, there we go. I was trying to turn it off. So I'll go back to the pencil. Oh, I'll go to selection. One thing that's important, when it's selected, remember that second option down, we can edit all those vertices. So having all those vertices to manipulate makes a big difference. So I used the pencil tool and just kind of drew it around and it put in all those points in space. And really what it is the vector that goes from 0, 0 to that point in space. That's not right. It goes, each one of these, there's the initial point, which is labeled as M if we look at look at it as a text file, that initial point, and then the vector that goes from that initial point to all these other points in space. Gives us a lot of editing capability as we do move on to other frames of our animation. I'll grab the pencil again, just kind of draw a big shirt. Put him in a blue shirt. Pencil still selected. So I'm going to draw like one arm. And give it the same color as that initial head. So I'm going to come back up here. Copy the color. Put that in. Put that in there. Probably turn all these outlines off. I'm going to go over to the stroke, fill in stroke tab, and then there's, I guess, call them sub tabs on there. If you go to the stroke one, just hit the X to get rid of an outline. If you're getting an outline and don't want it. And then when we grab the pencil tool again and draw something like the first leg. Notice that it keeps the previous settings. So since we just turned the stroke was turned off on the previous object. So when we draw the next object, it keeps that outline turned off. And then we can do some copying and pasting. So I'm going to copy this, paste it here. And then with that selected, we'll go up to object and lower that to the bottom so it's on the other side of the shirt there. Oh, I forgot to draw shoe. There could probably need some sort of foot thing going on. Black shoes. Got this. Copy that leg. Now paste it. And click again to maybe get some rotation. I'm gonna go to the first one and rotate it the other way. Get things kind of separated, scattered, set around where we can, we'll be able to work with them. And adding details in, I'll copy and paste the shoe, and just from the way that leg's angled, maybe I'll angle those shoes a little bit. So get up to some sort of good starting point. And now we can come back in and edit all those things. So like I was doing the entire leg at once. Might not be a bad idea to do the top half of the leg and then the bottom half of the leg. So then when you go to edit it into other positions for the animation, you have all the pieces separate. The trade-off for that is the more separate pieces you have, the more you have to edit every time you do something like that. So you can try experiment around, find a nice balance, right? Break the leg up into 2 or 3 different spots where you think you're going to be moving it and stuff. Right? If you have an upper and lower leg, then all you have to do is do the rotation on each one. I kind of drew the whole leg at once, but try to think ahead a little is the big thing. And along those, we probably want to work with layers. So I'm going to go to layer and open the layer and objects tab. Right now we just have the one layer with all these different paths, and it's kind of hard to tell what they are. Depending on what you're doing, the way we organize it on layers might, uh, uh, can make a difference. So we have those filters that can make this stuff look really nice when we're done. So we would probably want to do things like apply all the same filter to all the stuff that's skin color, and the same filter to all the stuff that would be fabric, like the shirt and the pants, and then a different filter to the shoes. So that might be a good way to organize the layers. And then even as we get all the different frames, we just go to that layer, select everything that's on the skin layer, and apply the filter to it all at once. I'm going to do frame by frame animation here. For a character sprite sheet, that is probably what I would do. I would probably do it, all the skin colored stuff, all the fabric stuff, all the leather, metal, and separate it by material. So then I can just go in and select all the material at once, and as the material we get the fine details in later. But that's a little, I was thinking, as I was getting ready for class, I was thinking it's probably easier just to think about frame. We can do each frame as a layer, just as a simpler start to layers. But the point there is we're not really restricted by anything. So I'm going to select this and just put this as a frame 0. Because eventually when we start working with it in code, we know the computer's going to name it frame 0. And we can go through and select these one at a time. Right? If we made a copy of this and then started doing the edits, it's hard to tell from here what's what. We have to go through and click on it and find a particular piece. So it'll save a lot of time to rename all this. So I'll call this one left shoe. And then this one, right shoe. Left leg, right leg. Right arm. Torso. And then I'm going to grab this stuff that I labeled as left. That was just an arbitrary choice. And I'm going to drag it down to the bottom so that things are kind of behind where they should be. If we're looking at the left side of the character, the left stuff should be further away from us and the right one is on our side. There's no shadows or anything, so we can't really tell which one is which. It kind of blends together here, but as you work in more details, that is something that definitely should show up, right? So planning ahead, the forethought, just kind of quickly draw the shapes and get a first draft down. You come back and edit it. That's the nice thing. You just want to make sure you're working in software that can be edited. At this point, we could resize it down to what our frame's going to be. I'm just going to go ahead and work with it big, and then I'll resize all of them at the end. Resize and position them all at the end. So I'm going to select everything there and copy that. And then over on the layer and object tab, the little green plus sign will give us another layer, which notice it automatically tried to name it frame 1. And then when I accidentally bumped that button and named it frame 2, let's go up to frame 3. Let's see what that'll work. That probably work. I accidentally bumped the button once, but notice what after we named the first one, it's going to start trying to predict the name we want for the rest of them. So I'll go ahead and frame 1, make sure I'm on this level, and paste that in, and just kind of position it where it needs to go. This we do a jump animation, that might work. So we just want to make small changes and just the bare minimum at a time. So I'm gonna redo the legs because we're gonna jump. First thing we're gonna do is crouch down to build up power and then push up, right? So I move one of the legs over here and, for crouching down, we could squeeze it down, but that might not look quite right. What I like to do is just take the pieces one at a time, maybe pull them to the side and redraw it with what it would be. So as we start to crouch down, that knee joint is going to become more pronounced, right? Oh, didn't need to set the color. I think it was this color. Probably do more than that. If I squeeze it up and stretch it out, through a little bit thinner, see how we still have a lot of the same. I'm trying to keep like the same area, right? No loss in area, just a change in the shape so that it still looks like that same pant leg. It's just in a different position. Maybe a little wider. There we go. So now I'll get rid of these two extra legs. I'll rename this new one as right leg. Come down and put it next to the right shoe. Make a copy of it. And just like last time, I'll rotate one of them forward a little and one of them backward. That way there's a little more discrepancy between them. Take just a second to relabel it, because in the long run, that relabeling is going to make a big difference. And if the legs are further down, it's probably going to come down. I'm going to stretch that shirt out a little. And I'll rotate him forward so that he's like going down like that, leaning forward and trying to build up lots of power before a jump. So just take a second to think about everything you want the character to do. Probably have the arms change a little bit. I'll just rotate them and move them so that it looks like they're he's lifting his arms out or something. So maybe not the best movement. It can come back and be edited. We just kind of want to go over the same steps. Does that make sense? Especially the thing with the legs, right? We just want it to be in a different shape, but it should still be the same amount of area for that particular shape we're modifying. I'm going to go back to this initial one, because with a jump, after we bend down and build up some force, we'd spring back up and I'll come up to the next frame, put it in there. And when he's up in the air, everything's going to be straightened out, right? Bend down, build up force, and then straighten up as it goes out. So in this case, what needs to change about the leg is it needs to be straighter. So it could be edited, right? Depending on how much time you want to take. You could come to the edit tool and grab every one of those vertices and drag them around. That can be very, very time consuming. So you probably don't want to do that unless there's just a couple of things to drag around, or you're working on an absolute masterpiece that you're willing to put in that much time into. For us, and in most situations, it might be easiest just to redraw it straight. Oops, that's not the line I wanted. I wanted the pencil tool. Oh, and try the different tools. This one the one that looks like a click, pin cap, it draws lines, so you like click once and then you click somewhere else and you drag out to where you want it to be. And we don't get as many lines. There's a lot less vertices to work with there. Whoops. Right, that only had, I did that with 6 points. And then coming back and editing that with vertex by vertex would be a lot easier. But trying the different pins and stuff to see what's going on as time allows. So draw that, and then this leg's going to be almost straight. So we get a little bit longer. Obviously, if it's straight, come out, back up. That'll probably work. I'm going to make it a little, whoops, a little bit wider because it looks like I might have lost some area. There we go. And that'll take the place of both legs. So erase those originals. Call this copy and paste. Right, so copy and paste as much as possible. One of them's right leg, one of them's left leg. And then just to keep things straight, didn't do it a moment ago, the left leg should probably be way down at the bottom so that it's behind anything on the right hand side. Same thing over here, I'll grab the left leg and bring it down by the left shoe and left arm. And the stuff at the bottom is further away. So if you've dealt with things with the Z axis in 2 dimensions, the Z axis is coming out of the screen or into it. So we have that basic idea of further away or closer, even though they are all at the exact same level. Really, it's just in front of or behind. Since the legs are longer, I'm going to grab this, move it up. And put them where they need to be. Do a little bit of rotating to get things to look right. There we go. Kind of set it where there's really just like one set of hips. Place. Probably going to flap his arms some while he's just do that. So I'll rotate this one way back around. Ooh, and it ended up behind something. So it's like that needs to go all the way to the top. Or the right leg needs to go down. There we go. So there's bending down, pushing up, and going up, and depending on the game, we might want an exact copy of that, right? Like he's flying through the air. So there's the first one. I'm going to hit copy, put this on the next frame or next layer, and still going up in the air. So maybe I'll just have him. I was trying to rotate. There we go. Like he's flapping his arms around as he's up in the air. That idea just popped in my head. That way, it's not an exact copy, and we still have something going on frame to frame. Then when we come back down, we need to absorb that impact from the ground, right? Our knees are going to bend again and catch all of that. Having the arms out for just any sort of counterbalance when we come back to the ground, that's going to come in so that our center of gravity is pulled tight and everything's pointed straight towards the knees, right? And that's something else that can be helpful to, if you're trying to animate a character jump, you don't have to jump high. Just go through the motions. Just like a 2-inch jump is enough that you can see what your own body shape is doing while you're motions you're going through and think about the important ones you need to have. But also the need's been different than when we're bending down, building up power than when we're absorbing the catch. Because actually our toes and ankles absorb a lot of the catch too. That's probably not showing on the camera because my feet are way down below. So, I'm going to go back to the original and copy that. Add one more frame up here at the top. Frame 4 is a good name for it. So I'll go to that layer, paste this in, and I need to do the absorbing the impact the same way. So at that point, the arms are going to come nearly straight down. So this arm probably won't even be visible. And the knee's going to bend as well as the ankles. So also need the shoe over here. So from the original position, the shoe, we can just bend that. Right? Spin that around, and then there's the version of the ankle, our ankles catching to the bottom of that catch. And then once again, I'm going to try to redraw that leg shape. Oops, I grabbed the wrong head. Let those buttons come back. I floated it. There we go. And just try to preserve area so that it's the same amount of fabric making up the leg. Just think about it that way, maybe. That looks like it's pretty close. I could maybe stretch it upward a little bit. That'll work. This shoe, I will bend down slightly differently than the first one. Grab both of those, kind of move it into the position it needs to be in. So this is right leg. That's just an extra thing, so I'll delete that one. Not sure where that came from. That was the original one, delete that. Copy and paste this leg. And maybe do some rotation. Now that frame seemed to get off a little bit, but not the best jumping animation I've ever done, but the basic idea makes sense there. So think a little bit ahead and try to make the very minimal number of adjustments you can each time. And since every shape is already separate, it really helps to keep them separate. So treat each one individually and then just try to preserve the area as you move it into another position. Right? Maybe during the jump, the head might bob a little, right? Just kneeling down to get build up power for the jump, probably going to look down, and then somewhere going through the air, maybe the head's tilted back. Think about little things like that. What's it going to be like with the punch and the kicks and all of that? And then I'm going to go ahead and go with that. So seems like a good point to say. Just have it saved in a moment. Spreadsheet too. Apparently already, oh yeah, I named those tile set spreadsheets, but I'll just call this character. So you'll want to have a couple of several actions. I think I said 3 in the instructions. Has anybody looked at them recently? I believe I said 3 actions with at least 4 frames each. So the jumping would be 1 action. Picking something up, kicking, punching, uh, a fatality scene for when the opponents overpower your character. Just a couple of them. Come up with a couple of them. Do at least 4 frames. And then we want to set the size. So I'm going to go with 64 by 64. 64 by 64, and this first one's going to be at 0, 0. What just happened? Let me undo a couple times. Oh, I thought you went backwards. Sorry. X and Y are first, so this is going to go at 0, 0, and it will be 64 by 64. Then the next frame, it kind of needs to be the same size, and when it's set there, when we load it in, there's a section for padding. So if you want to add some stuff to it, you can. You can add 5 or 6 pixels in between. They're just padding, and then when we go to load it in our game engine, we just say, okay, there's 5 pixels of space in between everything. So I'm going to select this next one. Then up here in the coordinate, the XY first, and then again, it's going to be a 64 by 64 frame animation. Maybe. Oh wait, it shouldn't be at 0, 0. The first one was started at 0 and is 64 frames wide. So that goes up to 64 pixels wide. Oh, frame pixels. Yes, okay. Mm pixels. So that goes up to 63. So the second one would start at 64 on the X. 0 on the Y, 64 on the X. And there's our second frame. I'm going to hit undo a couple times because now that I look at that, I'm thinking 64 by 128 might be a better size. It kind of squished him up quite a bit. So go back to the first one. Right, be prepared for that, to have to undo and go back a few steps and make the adjustments as you need them. That's why we're using this particular software, because it allows us to do that. So this time I'll do 64 wide by 128 tall. Yeah, that looks like it kept the original proportions a little bit better. Whenever it squished down, the knee on the second one did some really funky things. So then for our second frame, let's highlight that. It's going to be 64 pixels over, 0 pixels down, and 64 wide, 128 tall. And I believe that's one of the things in the rubric that says make sure every frame is the same, so that when we go get to our game engine, all we have to do is say, here's the spreadsheet, and then it loads it in, and we don't have to do any extra coding on it. 64, 0, 64, so next one's going to be 128 pixels over, 0 down, 64 wide, 128. See how that, it's kind of like a coding thing. And actually, this software, we could write a script, but that's not something we're going to see in this class. If you have software that you can type the box into the boxes, you can write a script. But that's usually something unique in every single one, so it's rarely a transferable skill and something to look up every time. But an easy thing to look up for whatever one you're in. 128, so 192. 0. Is that right? Whoops. This one, 128. Yeah, when I zoomed out, it looked like there was more space there for a second. And the last one, 192 plus 64 is 256. 64 by 128. So yeah, not any groundbreaking tips and stuff. Just keep those things in mind. Minimize the number of changes between each frame. That'll help to make smooth animation. And think ahead and only change that one shape you need to do and try to preserve the area. Preserve the area and it'll, it's kind of one of the most important things. All right, so that looks good. I'm gonna hit save. Go up here to the document properties. And this only needs to be, so that last one started at 256, so 256 plus 64 is, well, 256 plus 44 is 300, so 320. That didn't sound right because it's not a power to 2, but I guess, oh yeah, it is. Just not one it's not a power to 2, but it is a multiple of 64. So then we don't have any extra stuff, right? Set those properties to just the size you need. Then we can come over here and close document properties. Save this, and at this point, we could apply those filters to make it look nicer. An important thing to note, the filters only apply to a ping when we export it. So we can set it up both ways. So maybe I'll go through here. Hold down shift for multiple selections. And I'll try to select everything that's skin color. Which is probably easier to do over here. So actually I'll go over here. So there's an arm, a torso. And if you're doing it from the list, so if you're clicking in the viewport area, you hold shift to do multiple selections. And if you're clicking from the list over here, you hold control to do multiple selections. Which sounds really strange, but that is consistent across lots of graphic softwares. I'm not sure why somebody decided that should be the consistent. Should be kind of the standard, but they did. Right on, there's a head, and then back here, there's a head and an arm. So holding control and arm and arm. So then I can come up here to the filters. Make sure you resize it and position it before you do the filters, because sometimes the filters bring in extra things and they will change the size. And so you want to be at this point before you apply the filters. They're like the last step. So like a material of a wood, it just kind of gives some like shape, a little bit of shading to it. Something like that, or undo. Okay, good. Still selected. Filter. Some sort of marble. It kind of looks like that gave it a little bit of light on there. You can try different ones. See what you think looks good. Flexible metal. Let's see pretty much anything. Filters. There's looks. I'll apply a button to kind of make it look like things are rounded off. That's one. So then I'll go through and do the same thing for everything that would be fabric. So like the shirt, or I call it torso, and then the pants, so the leg. So torso, leg, down here, leg, torso, leg, torso, leg, torso, leg, and then try to find a filter that'll might make it look good. What happens if I go to the age filter? Okay, I wasn't expecting it to change colors, but that kind of works on there. Let me see what else we got. Filters, image, paint and draw. Tech tracks. Maybe not that filter. Cancel that one. Yeah, just try some different ones. Oh, feathering. Um, Probably go back to the material. That one. But you see, can't see the process. Maybe if I just do button. Okay, yeah, there. I just applied the same filter as I did the button filter on the other one. All that's left is shoes, so I think I can select all those at once. You have you have to have the entire object selected. So like there where I was dragging the box and just selecting like down to the bottom of the pants, it wasn't catching those. I'll apply the same one there. If I go to bevels and button, kind of rounds things off. So we got a little bit better images. They look a little bit better than just that basic shape. And we can apply more than one filter, so you can keep doing things that trial and error stuff. So now that that's done, the filters only apply to the export. So we want to go to File, make sure it's saved, go to File and Export. Why is it not? Okay, for some reason mine was set to, it's not transported. Be transparent. Let me check something. Background properties. Okay, I think it's going to be transparent, but it doesn't look like it down here. Either way, you click the little browse button and go to where this needs to go and export the ping file. Oh yeah. And then we can go back in Godot and load it in a spreadsheet. I was going to open one of the existing links here because they're all like scratch things. That one we did just a moment ago. It will work. And when you go to submit it, you're only going to be submitting that ping file that you export. But for the other one, you would probably go with an animatable. If you search for Sprite 2D, you notice there's Sprite 2D and animated Sprite 2D. You want an animated Sprite 2D. And over here in the inspector panel, under animation, it's asking for sprite frames. It says it's empty there. So we can import those to our project. Which alternatively, we could have just created those in our project and brought them in. I'll drag in the ping. And yeah, Godot can work with both of them. I apparently saved one of them in the wrong spot. Yeah, so I have that. The SVG, where you kind of see it when I hover over there. notice that preview is different. The filters do not apply to the SVG file. I'll use the character thing. So here in sprite frames, I want a new sprite frames. And when we click on that, it should open the tab down at the bottom, kind of like the tile set thing. Once we create a new one and click on it, it should open the tab down at the bottom. I'll do it this way. So it's this button that looks like a grid. If this wouldn't have been the way I set it up, but in Godot, it's this button that looks like a grid. When you click on that, it's asking where's our sprite sheet. So you can use either one. I'll use that ping. And then we set up our options. So there's 5 horizontal, 1 vertical, and it already figured out the rest of the sizes. Then they must be 64 by 128. You get all that. And then which frames do we want to select? Right, so if you have what you probably do for your sprite sheet that you turn in is you put each action on another row. So then you just you can go through and select which ones you want to use, add those, and it should be ready to go. So jumping animation, slow that down. It jumps off the ground, then we move our character up and back down over those number of frames. So a very quick pass there. I'm not going to grade the quality of the stuff partially, right? The big thing I'm looking for is that you get I can tell you've put some thought into what the frames of the animation should be, and there's the appropriate number there, and I can just load the picture into the animated sprite like that, and it does what it's supposed to do. Right? I'm not expecting everybody to be a master artist in this class. So just spend some time, because I want to be able to tell that you put thought into it and into what each frame should be, and things lined up and are organized correctly. Anybody have any questions about that? Give it a couple seconds. But yes, I need to go. I have to go hurry and change clothes and then grab a vehicle and meet people for their ride up here. I'm excited about the summit. It's a really fun time. So that was 5 seconds. I don't see anything popping up in the chat or anybody unmuting. If you have any questions, let me know. There'll be a slight delay over the next couple of days, but I will be checking my phone regularly, or my email regularly, and text messages regularly. Text messages and I Learn are still the 2 things that will make noise on my phone, but I will be in workshops and stuff throughout the day, and in loud rooms in the casino at night. So I may not hear it immediately. It's slight delay, but I will get back to you as soon as I can. You all have a great week, and I will see you next Monday.